Welcome back to my channel, baddies. Hello. Today we're going to bake a cake. I'm just kidding. This is a tumbler, but it is a cake. Do not worry. In this video, I'm going to teach you in detail how to make this tumbler. And by the end of the video, we're going to have a very beautiful wedding cake. A very simple, but very beautiful wedding cake. I never had an official wedding. Like, we were married in a courthouse, and that's pretty much it. So I am very excited to make my own wedding cake, you know? It's gonna be cute. So stay tuned so that I can show you how I made this. And of course, I'll link every single thing that I used in this video. The girls that own this company, Christina and Melanie, they are incredibly talented. They specialize in 3D tumblers. They just make the most incredible things. So their idea to create these 3D tumbler sleeves is genius, especially for those of us that maybe cannot sculpt this and get it perfect, you know, the way that they do, but they're making it possible for all of us to create really cool 3D tumblers, you know, in an easier way. So I can't wait to tell you all about this. And thanks for coming back. I love you so much. Besitos. Welcome to our new addiction. And I say our because trust me, you're about to be addicted like me. These 3D tumbler sleeves are so fun to work with. I know it may seem a little intimidating, also too because they're a little bit big, but don't let that scare you. They're super lightweight. I wanted to weigh this on camera and show you. It is not even 7 ounces, super lightweight, and they sell a whole bunch of different shapes. I really was excited about the cake one. So that's the one that I'm gonna do. And you can get kits on their website that come with tumblers that already fit inside of their 3D tumbler sleeves. The tumblers slide in and out of these sleeves super easy. They have so many options on their website. They have these stackable books. That's going to be my next project. So it's really interchangeable, very diverse, and don't worry about how we're going to get it to stick on there permanently. I'm about to show you, and seriously, it is super beginner friendly. I'm going to start by prepping all of my tumblers. There's a lot of people who debate whether you should prep or not. I'm going to tell you to live your life the way that it gives you peace and happiness. Me personally, I want to remove this glossy finish over my tumbler just to make sure it doesn't repel my epoxy or any of the, supplies that I will be using to attach my sleeve. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm outside in my some people call it a garage. I'm going to go ahead and call it a outdoor filming studio. We've got our PPE, we've got our respirator, and I've got some mixed epoxy here. I'm going to take a very thin coat and completely coat the entire tumbler. And while it's still wet and sticky, I'm going to slide it into the sleeve. Now, I'm going to let this sit out here for an entire day, but make sure that you put this on a flat surface. I'm doing it over a silicone mat. The reason you want to do that is because you don't want your tumbler to be uneven and dry on your sleeve that way, because then it's going to wobble when you try to lay it flat on your table. So make sure that while you're letting that cure and letting that dry, make sure you have it on a very flat surface, preferably over a silicone mat so that it doesn't stick to whatever surface you rested on. Now, once it's completely dry, your project is going to look like this, okay? You're going to not be able to pull that sleeve off even if you try super duper hard. It is on there like white on rice, like me and Bad Bunny's DMs. Actually, I'm mad at him, so I haven't been in his DMs lately. But anyway, let me get back to our tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and use some white chalk paint that I got at Hobby Lobby to prep the rest of my tumbler white. You can also use spray paint. It's really humid right now in Florida, and sometimes using spray paint takes a little bit longer because even after it dries, it stays kind of sticky. So I'm going to go ahead and go with some chalk paint. It dries super fast, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to shove my little paintbrush in that little nook, make sure I get everything in there. And just make sure I have a very nice even coat because I will be using a white glitter. Once my tumbler is completely dry, I'm going to take some Mod Podge. Now, I'm going to do section by section. This is a very big tumbler. and I don't want to have to feel like I'm racing the clock so that my glue doesn't dry. So we're going to go ahead and easy does it, slow and steady wins the race. Wow, I'm full of cheesy one-liners today. Make sure you stick it in the crack as well. I didn't say anything dirty. And technically, I'm just describing what I'm doing, which is sticking the paintbrush in the crack. If any of you took that in a dirty way, that's on you and your conscience, okay? So the reason I want to stick it in the crack is because I want to make sure that if there's any space in there, I'm filling it with glue and glitter so that when I come over and epoxy over this, it's not releasing any air bubbles after I epoxy. So that's why you want to make sure you get that paintbrush in that crack nice and good, okay? The crack that's, you know, in between the tumbler and the sleeve. My goodness gracious. Also, you know, I'm not responsible for what you're thinking. Okay, Baddiee. So now we're going to move on to the very bottom tier of the cake. You know what? It is a cake, okay? It's not a cake, but it is. It is a cake. So we're just going to call it a cake. Like I said, Mod Podge dries quickly, so we're going to go ahead and work in sections. I could use a glue that takes a little bit longer to dry, or I could apply my glitter using the epoxy method. The reason I didn't is because I'm a very impatient person and I wanted to get this tumbler glittered, sealed, and epoxied right away. I was too excited. So that's the reason why I am choosing to use Mod Podge. This is going to dry fairly quickly, and by the time I'm completely done coating this, it's already going to be fully dry, and I'm going to be able to dry brush this and go in with a second coat. I normally wouldn't do 2 coats, but this is a little more intimidating project for me. It's a 3D tumbler, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss a little corner somewhere. So that's the reason why I decided to come back and do a second coat, just to make sure I was fully covered. Guys, I truly, when I started this project, I felt intimidated. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to be super transparent with you. I see all of these 3D artists creating such incredible work, and I'm like, man, I just don't know that I could ever get my edges super straight like that. I don't know that I would be able to sculpt that with these sausage fingers. So the fact that they are setting the foundation for us to be able to build on is so amazing, because you know, normally the 3D artist would sculpt the whole 2 tiers of the cake out of clay, which also would make the tumbler a lot heavier. And now they're making this a much more simple process for us by creating something that already has the shape ready, and it's not going to be super heavy. You would be surprised how lightweight this tumbler was when I was done. It's not even the heaviest tumbler I've made. Now, something that I've seen a lot of people comment on videos of 3D tumblers is that's not going to fit in a cup holder. You know, that's not very conventional to walk around with. And my answer to that is these are beautiful works of art. And I know I'm not going to walk around drinking out of this tumbler all the time because I don't want to risk damaging it. But to me, I feel so proud to have something so cool that it's a tumbler for you to drink out of, but it's a cake. So I'm going to have this on display, you know, to where someone comes to my house, I can show it to them. I can post it on social media, show people the possibilities of what you can do with it, you know? So definitely not the kind of cup that you're going to haul around to soccer practice or any of that stuff. These cups are super amazing to have on display and admire them. So like I said, I never had an official wedding. So to me, this is my wedding cake, okay? And I get to brag and say that I made my own wedding cake. So what I'm doing now is I am going in with my second coat of glitter. I'm doing a time lapse because you don't want to watch me glitter this in real time all over again. You queens have things to do, and kings. So once I had both of my coats of glitter on there, I took it outside and I sealed it 3 times with, I use Rust-Oleum clear gloss sealer. I did 3 coats and let each coat dry for about 20 minutes, just because I wanted to make sure that my glitter was solid on there, that it wasn't going to be moving around when I went in with my epoxy. And I believe I did about 60 mLs of epoxy. I did 30 mLs of part A and 30 mLs of part B. That actually was more than I needed. I actually had to put the rest of my epoxy in a mold. But sometimes when you're working on a project, you know, that's a little bit bigger, it's okay to have too much. It's better than to not have enough, you know? And so here's a few tips that I can give you just based on what I learned working on this project. Number 1, I think it's a lot easier to apply your epoxy when you're holding your tumbler in your hand, you know, and then take your time, get it completely coated, and then attach it to your turner. So here I tried it this way, and then when I came in to do the second coat, I applied it a different way, and you'll see in just a moment. I personally thought it was easier, and I felt like I had more control of the epoxy when I was holding the tumbler in my hand and controlling the movements of it while I was adding my epoxy. Another tip that I would highly recommend is do not use a fast set epoxy when you are working with a project like this, because you're going to have to hurry if you're using a fast set. Typically fast sets have like a 15 to 20 minute work time before it starts getting super hot and, you know, already kind of starts to cure a little bit. You do not want to run out of time before you have fully coated this tumbler. So make sure you are not using a fast set. It took me, I want to say about maybe 4 minutes to completely go all around the tumbler. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing any spots. Wanted to make sure I was getting a very even coat. I took my time. I did notice that it was a little bit harder for me to maneuver around as the cup was turning. So I definitely recommend for you guys to apply your epoxy the way you're going to see me do in the next clip when I come back and do my second coat. I let this spin for, I believe, like 14 hours. And then I came back in and did my second coat. So I am holding my tumbler by the tumbler insert, the PVC pipe, and I am pouring the epoxy little by little. And as you can see here, I'm working a little bit faster than I was before. This is because I have complete control of where the epoxy is going and, you know, the movement of the tumbler. And I didn't have any issues with it pooling, with the epoxy pooling in the little steps. And that was because I had complete control of the angles of the tumbler. So I got this coat on a lot faster than the first time around. Now you guys, we all have our methods. So you guys try both ways, see what works for you. At the end of the day, the job is going to get done and it's going to look beautiful. So some things work better for others. Try both ways and see which way you like the most. I definitely loved being able to have like full control of the motion of the tumbler while I was getting my epoxy on there. Also, I know this is a very long video and I'm so sorry for that. I just really wanted to make sure that I gave you very detailed information so that if you're nervous like I was, you would have more than enough information and step-by-step instructions on how to be able to, you know, make this reality come true. I know I felt a little nervous, so I just want to ease your minds and walk you through it. And if you're welcome to, you know, skip through any steps if you kind of already know. But for those of you who maybe are trying something of this magnitude for the first time, then I'm happy to be here and provide, you know, this super detailed video for you because I don't want you to walk away with any questions, okay? So I went ahead and just sanded my tumbler a little bit on the edges to make sure that it was smooth. And then I washed it. And now we're going to use Super Sculpting oven bake clay. And you have to condition this clay. Okay, you have to condition this clay. And that just means that you've got to kind of maneuver it in your hands, you know, mess it. The more that you mess with it, the softer it's going to get, the easier it's going to be to work with. It helps if you have a little pasta maker, a little, you know, pasta roller, because you can, you know, once you get it like worked in a little bit, you put it through the pasta roller and that just helps you soften it up even faster. Listen, my fingers start to cramp up after a little bit. So for me, it's really helpful to have a pasta roller and just kind of, you know, get that worked in and softened up just a little bit easier without me having to put so much elbow grease into it. Once you have it nice and soft, you want to form like a little turd, kind of like you saw the shape I did there, and then run it through your pasta roller once. And then you are going to take the edge and with your thumb, you're going to slowly start to roll in. And this is a little rosebud right here, what we're doing. It's a little rosebud, and do not be hard on yourself, okay? If you've got to smush the first few flowers that you do, it's okay. I totally had to smush so many flowers, but of course I didn't leave that in here or this video would be 6 weeks long. But I do want you to know, I did not get my rose on the first try. I tried about 3 times before I was happy with it. So be kind to yourself. You're creating this by hand, which is so impressive already. Do not lose the fun factor in creating by putting too much pressure on yourself, okay? So just remember that. So just roll it as much as you want. You can make the rosebuds as little or as big as you want. I do recommend doing different sizes. It's going to give you that nice, dimension in your little flower clusters once you put them on your cake. So definitely make sure you've got lots of different size flowers. So once you have connected your little rose all together, and once you have made it as wide as you want, you're going to go ahead and just take the outer edges of your flower and open them up a little bit the way that you see me doing here. Just be gentle, spirit fingers, and just do it on the last layer. And then you're going to take a clay cutter and just cut, about 1/2 inch of the backing. The reason I recommend that you do that is because we want to lay these flush against the cake. And if you leave a whole bunch of clay behind your flower, you're going to have kind of an issue once you try to glue these onto your cake, because they're going to stick out a lot more than you want them to. So just keep that in mind when you are making these flowers. Super important to cut a little bit of that backing off. And like I mentioned before, you make your little turd. You run it through the pasta roller and just take your time, okay? Just roll it in, make your little bud, make them as little or as big as you want them, okay? And then once you've gotten it to like where you feel like, okay, this is a good size rose, just wrap the edge, bring it down towards the bottom of the rose, and clip it off, rub it in a little bit, take your thumb and just kind of bring out that little flap. Okay, you're creating those beautiful rose petals and opening it up. Super beautiful, super pretty. I had so much fun making these. And then just grab your little clay cutter and cut the excess clay on the back of the rose off, and then set these on a baking tray. As I was making all of these, I was setting them on a baking tray so that I don't have to pick them up and move them too much. They go straight on the baking tray, and when I'm done, I just go pop them in the oven. And like I said, take your time, be kind to yourself, be patient, have fun while you're doing this. Put on a little Netflix show, listen to a little smut, whatever floats your boat, whatever tickles your pickle. But I was watching Vampire Diaries. I love Vampire Diaries. This is the 3rd time I'm watching the entire show. So I was good. Now you want to take a tiny little ball like this. I would say like the size of a dime, maybe smaller, and just kind of roll it into a little ball. And then you're going to take your index finger and your thumb and press it down flat. For this, we're going to make a leaf. Okay, so I wanted to show you how to make the roses, which we just did. Now I'm going to show you how to make the leaves. Once you press it down with your index finger and your thumb, you want to kind of maneuver the way you see me doing here. You want to slowly start pinching one side to bring it in like that, make it look like a chin butt crack. And then with your other index finger and thumb, you kind of just want to press the edge and maybe even clip off a little bit to give it that little pointy edge. And with my X-Acto knife, I just gave it a little bit of texture. You don't have to do this. I'm extra, so that's why I wanted to do it. But look how pretty it is. Okay, and then you're going to paint these after you bake them. And I know sometimes it's kind of hard to visualize. Sometimes it's hard to trust the process, but trust me. Do you trust me? Trust me, okay? Here you see me trying to multitask. This is why my keyboard always has like butter, because I'm typing while I'm eating popcorn. I'm typing while I'm sculpting, while I'm using glitter. There is glitter, butter, and residue of glue everywhere. Okay, baddies, so once you're done, you want to bake these at 275 for 20 minutes. The box of the clay has the instructions and tells you how much to bake. I did 20 minutes at 275, and then I let them cool, and that was the perfect temperature. Once they were cooled, they were completely hard to the touch. And then I took a little bit of alcohol ink. Of course, I'm using Jen's Crafted Gems, amazing quality, super pigmented inks. This is what I'm using to paint my little leaves and my flowers. If you don't want to use alcohol inks, you can use chalk paint, you can use acrylic paint, whatever method is going to work best for you. I wanted to use the inks, so this is what you see me doing here. I will link all of the colors in the description that I used. I think this green was perfect for the leaves. And I do recommend using gloves. I was super distracted watching Vampire Diaries, and I wish I would have worn gloves because My fingers were full of alcohol inks when I was done. So just take your time, take your time, be patient, paint all of your leaves. I did all of the leaves first because they were just one color. And then I grabbed different color alcohol inks to do my flowers next. You guys already know my favorite color is pink. So of course I wanted to make my roses pink. I wanted to do different shades of pink, and then I wanted to do a purple. I would recommend doing multiple colors for your roses. It's going to give more of a like bouquet look than if you just did one color. Honestly, who am I to tell you how to live your life? Do the roses all color if you want to. Don't listen to me. I am not the boss of you. I personally loved the fact that I used different colors. I used, I believe, 2 different shades of pink, and then I used a purple, and I kept adding white ink to the purple to create different shades of purple. And I absolutely love how my little flowers turned out. This is one of the reasons I thought using alcohol inks was easier to paint these roses, is because alcohol inks are very runny. And so I just had to drip a little bit into those little nooks and crevices, those little swirls inside of the rose. And the ink dripped right in there and got in deep into the rose. And I didn't have to shove my paintbrush in there too deep. It just kind of naturally dripped down in there. It was super easy. I laid these flowers out to dry, I want to say for about an hour before I decided to start gluing them on. Just wanted to give the inks enough time to fully dry. The last set of roses, I decided to do purple. The way that I did it is that I would do a few roses and then I would add some white alcohol ink to the purple to make it a different shade of purple. And I did that like 2 or 3 times so that I could have different levels of purple. And I love how they turned out. I think my favorite one that I ended up doing was the very last one. I think by that point I had added a whole bunch of white, and it created the most beautiful shade of purple. Absolutely fell in love with it. Now that I'm thinking back, I'm really glad that I did these colors, but I do feel like some yellow roses. Oh my goodness. I just have a feeling I'm going to make another cake. I know myself. I have an obsessive personality. I don't know how to like something like a normal person does. I have to like things very aggressively and be all in. So don't be shocked if you see me make another tumbler. I think yellow roses would be really beautiful, and maybe orange, and the contrast of the green leaves. Oh my goodness. I think that would be so beautiful. This is that super light purple I told you I ended up coming up with that I absolutely fell in love. And like I mentioned before, this is the same purple ink. I just kept adding white to create different shades. But this last purple, I was like, whoa, wow. Okay, I can add expert alcohol ink mixer to my resume. For those of you who are new to my channel, my videos are not normally this long. And I don't normally, I do talk a lot, but they're not normally this long. I just really want you guys to feel confident. I want you to walk away from this video with the confidence that I gave clear enough instructions for you to be able to try this at home and recreate it. And if you do, please tag me on Instagram. I really want to see what you guys create. And I really want to be able to look at all your beautiful different flower combinations and all of that stuff. So I hope that I have answered any questions that you may have. We are going to be using E6000 to attach our flowers. At this point, I have let my flowers and my leaves dry for about an hour. Here's a tip that I'm going to give you. I kind of took a few of the roses and kind of placed them first just to make sure they were going to fit in the spot I wanted to put them before I put my glue on, just so that I wasn't smearing glue all over my cake tumbler and not liking where my roses were ending up. So I just kind of like played Tetris a little bit and put the roses in different little areas to make sure that I was going to like the overall placement. Now, please make sure that you either have a window open, you have some good ventilation, or maybe you have an air filter in the room where you're using E6000. I always recommend that whatever products you are using to craft with, you read the ingredients and you are aware of what chemicals you are breathing in and all of that good stuff. Safety first, safety first. So here I'm already like excited. Like you guys can't hear me, but I'm like, yes, queen. literally just got one rose and one leaf on it. And I was like, ah, I'm a baker. I was very excited. I absolutely was in love with how this was turning out. And I couldn't believe that I made the roses and the leaves. I cannot take credit though. My sweet friend Jen from Jen's Crafted Gems, she taught me how to make these flowers on FaceTime. She was very kind, very patient. She used to work at a bakery. So she taught me how to make these flowers, and I'm glad that I was able to take what I learned from her to teach you. That is one thing I love about the crafting community. It's okay to say that you got help from somebody. It doesn't make you any less talented. It's okay to receive help and to learn things from other people and to credit them, because we all can learn from each other. We can all improve our skills by giving each other tips. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You can learn from everybody. It does not take away from the fact that you are creative in your own way. So thank you, Jen, for helping me, boo. You're the best. I'm so thankful. Now I want to make flowers every day. So the process for adding your flowers is very simple. It's very repetitive. Just continue to see where pieces fit and what you like where. Add a little bit of E6000, hold it in place. I kind of let each little cluster of flowers dry for about 30 minutes before I moved on to the next tier, just because I didn't want my flowers moving around and shifting while I was still trying to place my clusters. So I wanted to make sure that, hey, I really liked how this little first cluster turned out. I'm going to let this fully dry and set before I move on to the next set. So that's another little good tip for you guys. This tumbler is one of my proudest things I've ever made. I have always admired all of the 3D work that people do, and I'm just like, that is so cool that that is a tumbler. That is so impressive to me. And to be able to show someone a tumbler that they're like, there's no way that's a cup, and you're like, I swear it's a cup, and guess what? I made it. There's just something so satisfying in that. So please, if you feel intimidated at all, I promise you, it is not as scary as it may seem. And I really would love to see you guys step out of your comfort zone and give it a try. I know I'm really glad that I did. And I do want you guys to get ready, because we definitely are going to be doing some more of this 3D work on my channel. Why? Because I have an obsessive personality and now I want to make more. So definitely recommend hitting up their website and looking at all of their cool sleeves that they have. I think my next project I'm going to take on is the stackable books that they have. I am obsessed with a book series called The Elite Kings Club. The author is Emma Jones. She is a very dark author, so always read trigger warnings before you read any books. I love that series so very much. And so I really want to do, my favorite series on the stackable books on a tumbler, but you could follow along and do whatever book series you like. Okay, after I was done with all 3 of my clusters, I let the cup dry for a few hours. I wanted to make sure that those flowers were not going to go anywhere. I wanted to make sure they weren't going to be sliding around or anything. So I let that dry for a few hours, and then I came back. I am using Flint Sisters epoxy. I believe I mixed 60 mLs, 30 of A, 30 of B. And I am using this little paintbrush just to get into all of the details of the flowers. Definitely do your flowers before you get epoxy over the rest of the cup. Now I recommend, being patient and taking your time, because if you let the epoxy puddle and pool up inside of the roses, you don't want to lose any of that beautiful detailing. You want a nice thin coat. So your brush is going to help you brush into those little cracks and not just let it pull up to where you lose the detail. You really want to see all of those ridges and cracks and all of that goodness. So take your time. This is again why I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I highly, highly recommend using not a fast set epoxy. Use a regular epoxy so that you've got a very decent working time. I want to say it took me about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more to do this. So definitely don't use a fast set. Now I'm going to go ahead and slowly dip my fingers inside of the epoxy and start to coat the rest of the tumbler. By this point, I've already made sure that I have fully coated my flowers and my leaves with my paintbrush. They're completely coated in a thin coat of epoxy. Now, another tip that I'm going to give you is make sure that when you're applying epoxy to the rest of your tumbler, do small amounts at a time. Don't pour too much. And the reason for this, again, is we don't want our epoxy puddling in areas or pooling up, and we don't want to lose any of the detail that we have worked so hard for. So thin coats, you know, let it even out, let it smooth out. You don't want it to start to get runny or puddle up anywhere. So just take your time. You know, it's a work of art. It's a process. Be patient. Give it some loving and just take your time. You know, I definitely think that you're going to like applying epoxy more by holding your tumbler in your hand like this. I have so much more control over the movement of the tumbler, and this just made it so much easier. Once I felt like I had the entire tumbler completely coated, the flowers coated, and I didn't feel like I had puddles anywhere that were going to be like pulling up, I went ahead and I attached it to my turner again. And while it was spinning, I just came in to do some final touches just to make sure that, you know, everything was perfect and that I didn't mess anything up while attaching it to my turner. So I let it spin, and then I just kind of continued to smooth the epoxy out, make sure, I know I'm going to say this a lot, but it's very important, just making sure that my epoxy wasn't pooling up anywhere, that I didn't have a super thick coat somewhere and it was, you know, puddling up behind the roses or something like that. So just kind of gave it a little once over, made sure everything was good, everything was smooth. And if you have chubby fingers like moi, you could even take that little paintbrush that you were using for the detailing and just kind of brush behind the roses. If you feel like you couldn't get your finger in there and you feel like you might have not gotten a smooth coat of epoxy behind your roses, the paintbrush is really going to help you with that. I like to use a small handheld kitchen torch to pop my bubbles. I don't let the flame hover over a section for too long because I don't want to overheat my epoxy. Luckily, this epoxy is amazing and I never really have any issues with bubbles. So just a quick little spritz in different areas and I'm good to go. And here's just a quick example of what I meant earlier when I said, if you feel like your chubby little finger couldn't get behind those flowers and you feel like you didn't get a nice even coat back there, just go ahead and use a little paintbrush to get in there and rub any epoxy in areas that you may have missed. I do not want to toot my own horn. I want to be humble. I am so proud of myself though, and I am so obsessed with this tumbler and I can't believe I made it. I'm so happy. Once I was done, I have this cover that my dad made for me for my tumblers. He just went to Home Depot, bought a whole bunch of supplies and put these together for me. He's the best. I cover my tumblers while they spin and then I let this spin overnight, and here's the final product. I hope you love it. Please leave me a comment and let me know what else you would like to learn on my channel. See you next time. Besitos!